you talk about a cold dip down in the middle of the continent.
Yeah, it's the first time we've seen blue, I want to say, all year. Like, what the heck? I don't know what's going on. I mean, just finally, it's finally getting cold. I mean, we know this year is way above average, but just for October,
I think what this is reflecting is still the wavering jet stream
I see.
dipping down and bringing some of the cooler air mass with it, as well as the fact that when you look at what the Arctic Oscillation, Arctic Dipole is doing, Alaska is still on. Although Alaska's doing weird things. It's like sometimes it's a little cooler than average, a little warmer than average. It's doing some really weird
Right.
things. I mean, we had a cold start to the beginning of November. We came close to setting record low temperatures.
Wow.
It's just, and then it warmed up like, geez, it went from -30 to positive 20, it's like 50 degrees, and then we got thumped on with the snow. It's just been crazy.
Well, how do you feel about those swinging temperatures? I mean, there's even in Colorado, here in California, we've had like 90-degree days and then like 60. Like, it's just these crazy swings. Do you have any, like, that's happening in Alaska, basically?
Beginning of the beginning of November so far, yeah.
Okay.
How you explain that is that we perturbed the system so much that it's trying to
Uh,
find this new equilibrium. And
but
until it
there's
finds
so
this
much
new
shit.
equilibrium, it's going to be doing these crazy stuff. But we keep perturbing the system, making settling into a new equilibrium state more difficult. It's chaos theory.
I
It's
know,
chaos
damn
theory
it.
in action.
It is. But damn it, Jim. Okay, so yeah, that's happening in Alaska. It's happening in a lot of places. Just the fact
Yeah.
there's 90-degree days and then all of a sudden it's 60. What does that do to the body? And then you said like the adaptations.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Exact. Excellent point. I mean, I have a friend of mine back in like New England. Is be one day be 22 degrees and they get like 10 inches of snow, and the next day it's 60 and it all
Yeah.
melts.
And
It's
just like,
like
yeah, there was that story out of Colorado. It was like 100 degrees and then went to like something crazy like that. Below freezing. It's
exactly, yeah.
just weird stuff. Weird stuff. But that's just, how it is. There's a wrench in the system. There's little anomalies that are, it's like those red flag warnings, I guess, is how I see that. But yeah, you said they're trying to find their equilibrium and it's struggling to.
Everything just keeps getting messed up, and then when you throw in the ramifications of the positive feedback loops kicking in, and it's it makes for modeling this very challenging.
I agree. Just looking, going forward with the second one, the precipitation NOAA 2, the precipitation percent of average for the individual month of October paints a
Yeah,
strange, the story. The issue is the West again, and then the Appalachian or the South in the storm. So we're,
what what you're seeing, if we look at like say the Gulf Coast, from Louisiana over up into the Mississippi Valley, Ohio River Valley, that's reflecting the various storms that came through. Some
which
of the
there were a lot. There was like 12 landfalls, which is like way above average.
right.
Louisiana, I could say it.
Yeah. So that's what's being reflected there. Are those the now 30 storms of significance in the Atlantic this year. And what's alarming to me is just California and Western Nevada and Western Arizona. I mean, that is very, very dry. That is not going to help with the fire situation.
No, we haven't had well, let's just say we haven't had any significant rainfall since May. We had like,
Oof.
yeah, like an overnight rain finally in November, but and then I looked back at some data from like an app. Anyway, it was showing like the precipitation data for where I live, Los Angeles, and our rainiest months of this year were supposed to be January, February. We had like no rain. We had no rain in our rainiest months, and this is just that continuation. So it's very
What's that
extreme.
doing? What's that doing for the crops in the valley and so on?
I'm assuming it's not great. I haven't heard much. Maybe it's just because I'm it's over the grapevine. I don't know. The news doesn't really focus on that down here, but I know in the Central Valley it's probably an issue.
Because I
But
know, for example, almonds, which California grows a lot of, but almonds require a lot of water to grow, and I'm imagining it's affecting the almond crops.
that's a great point, Jim. Just the fact that California is this agricultural center, and these extreme dry conditions. I know you mentioned the La Nina. That's probably what's going on as well, but it's more extreme. I mean, if we're not getting any rain during the winter's months, I mean, literally no precipitation
Yeah,
limit
and
at all.
we're definitely in a moderate La Nina now, for sure.
Okay,
And usually that means kind of less precipitation for the western U.S. usually,
we get
and also
fire. We just had a fire when it was like cold out because it's so dry. But if the winds pick up, it sparks even if
if
it's
you have anything smoldering, you got the wind pickup. I mean, we see this up here in the Arctic. We've got what's called now. We now have a term for it, holdover fires. You got piles of snow on. You think, okay, let's just snuff out the fires, and then the snow melts, and the ground is so dry, and it was still smoldering this entire time. They didn't even melt the
yeah,
snow, but still smoldering, and then just flares right up there. That's
it's
what
amazing.
happened, in Alaska. That's what happened in Russia, over in Siberia. I mean, it's just crazy.
And then just moving forward, the third one talks about the individual month of just looking at it as a state by state instead of region. Just the fact that California had its hottest, warmest October on record, and I'm pretty sure the last 2 months we did this, California had its hottest September and August. So that's 3 straight months of like breaking records, I guess, on California just as an individual state. Not
It,
good.
it's
Okay.
it's interesting that the two coasts were warm, the middle was cooler, and then you had a bunch that were, you know near normal, near average. It's just very interesting.
I know California's in trouble. I'm just gonna go ahead and say the obvious. Just the water issues too. We haven't had any restrictions. I know you've asked about that. There's nothing, even though I'm pretty sure the authorities know, or like the government knows.
That, I have to be honest, that surprises me that there are no restrictions put in place, because it is such an issue. Um,
Our
yeah,
governor
and
can't.
but this is, I hate to say it, you have too many people putting a huge stress on a limiting resource.
Absolutely. I know it's not a popular thing to say, but it's the damn
It's
truth.
it's not the popular thing to say. It's not the polite thing to say, but it is what's going on. And this is true worldwide. There's just too many people on the planet. We're we're starting to see. We're now over 8 billion people. We're now starting to see that we're really putting the stress on the system to the breaking point. And I think we're seeing the breaking taking place. Um, when you got the issue of also sea level rise, so now you're going to have even less land for more people. Jesus, something's going to give.
There's a lot of so I was looking at interesting you said that because I was a while ago feels like a year ago. Last week I was looking at world populations again because yeah, you've talked about this issue too. Just the projections, it keeps projecting to go to like almost 11 billion by 2100, and we've talked about like okay, we're having trouble at 8 billion. What's gonna, the correlation issue, the corrective measure issue is another
Yeah.
issue in that whole population.
Well, that's why I did that little rough hand sketch in my little population video that I did. I did that rough hand sketch showing here's the population, here's the resources, and they're just kind of going further apart from each other. And it's just the two curves are never going to meet.
And we've basically accelerated because of the industrial revolution, right? Like we've been able to sustain.
Yes.
So, okay. And we can get into that. Like, let's set some time, and then we can finish up. I just pulled up again. Whenever they do a new month, they like add in the data and then to see where the individual states are in terms of temperature. And we got two new ones instead of So the first 10 months, January through October, shows where the states are at so far this year. Most of them much above average, but instead of Florida being the record warmest, we've added Arizona and New Mexico having the record warmest years.
What
Interesting.
this is showing is that how hot the beginning of the year was, because look how cool October was, but yet when you average in for the first 10 months of this year, even with the cool October, average wise, it was still above average, for the state. I mean, you really have what, Oklahoma, what's that, Iowa and Arkansas, no, not in Missouri and Arkansas, that were normal, were at average. Everything else is warm to very warm.
There's no blue. There's no
Yeah,
blue.
it's
As the macro level.
it's just crazy, but it goes to show you how hot things were at the beginning of the year. Yeah, and into the summer, we've had a little bit of cool down because of the polar vortex, and the jet stream's probably dipping down a bit, so that the upper central part of the continent cooled down a bit. But